A luxury car saleswoman thought she could judge a customer by their appearance. When Sandra Bullock walked into the dealership wearing a hoodie and cap, the saleswoman dismissed her without a second thought. But what she didn't know was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her career. When Keanu Reeves walked in, he did something that left everyone speechless. You won't believe how this story ends. What happened next turned into a scandal no one saw coming. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another special story for you. The parking lot of the luxury dealership reflected the opulence of its clientele. Gleaming cars were arranged like jewels on display. The mirrored glass facade caught the clear sky as a discreet SUV pulled into a spot near the entrance. A woman stepped out dressed in a blue hoodie and black cap. Her movements were calm, her posture unhurried. She gently closed the door and adjusted her sunglasses before making her way toward the showroom entrance. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of new leather, and the cars glistened under the showroom lights. Employees in perfectly tailored suits moved between high-profile clients offering them strategic, personalized attention. Sandra Bullock entered unnoticed. Her gaze swept across the cars, genuine interest flickering in her eyes. But no one seemed to pay her any mind. In this dealership, appearances mattered. Well-dressed men with expensive watches and women in designer dresses glided between the vehicles as salespeople carefully selected whom to assist. Near the service desk, a saleswoman in polished high heels scanned the showroom, identifying promising clients. Her eyes briefly landed on the casually dressed woman in the hoodie and cap before dismissing her with a well-rehearsed smile. She approached a couple clad in branded outfits, engaging them in warm conversation. Sandra continued walking through the cars, analyzing their specifications and feeling the texture of the interiors. Her eyes locked onto a luxury convertible. Its details made it irresistible. The white leather seats, the polished exterior, the sophisticated dashboard. She stepped closer, her fingers grazing the handle. Yet no salesperson rushed over to assist her. After a few minutes, Sandra decided to seek assistance. She approached the service desk, just as the same saleswoman from earlier finished speaking with a wealthy couple. Upon seeing Sandra approach, the saleswoman's expression shifted ever so slightly. Polite but detached. "Hi, can I help you?" she asked, adjusting her name tag. Sandra gestured toward the convertible. "I like that model. Is it available?" The saleswoman glanced briefly at the car, then back at Sandra. A subtle, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corners of her lips, but her eyes betrayed a hint of judgment. "Oh, that's one of our most exclusive models. It comes with a premium package. Maybe I can show you some more affordable options that might suit what you're looking for." Sandra kept her expression neutral. "I'm really interested in this one. I'd like to know more about it." The saleswoman hesitated, as if debating whether it was worth spending time on this customer. Finally, she exhaled softly and conceded. "All right, I can show you the specifications. But just so you know, this model comes at quite a high price." Sandra smiled slightly. "That's fine. I'd still like to learn more about it." The saleswoman swallowed hard. Sandra followed her to the car, listening attentively as she explained the technical details. She asked about engine performance, interior materials, and customization options. With each question, the saleswoman looked increasingly surprised. "You seem to know a lot about cars," she commented, trying to hide her astonishment. Sandra shrugged. "I like to know what I'm buying." The saleswoman forced a smile. "Well, this model offers exceptional drivability, but of course, it's a car designed for a very specific clientele." Sandra ignored the implication and ran her fingers over the leather steering wheel, feeling its smooth texture. "Sounds great. Is it available for a test drive?" The saleswoman let out a short laugh, unsure if she heard correctly. "A test drive?" Sandra nodded. "Yes, I'd like to see how it handles on the road." The saleswoman hesitated. "Normally, we only allow test drives for clients with serious purchasing intentions." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "And I don't seem serious?" The saleswoman backtracked. "Oh, that's not what I meant. It's just that this model has very high demand, so we're a bit more selective with test drives." Sandra remained silent for a few moments, simply observing the woman. She noticed the discomfort in the saleswoman's eyes and how her body language tried to mask her initial judgment. Finally, Sandra offered a slight smile. "That's fine. Just put me on the list of interested buyers." The saleswoman looked relieved, but before she could respond, a male voice interrupted. "Excuse me, do you have this model available for a test drive?" Sandra turned and saw a well-dressed man with neatly styled hair and an expensive watch on his wrist. The saleswoman's demeanor shifted instantly. Her smile became genuine, and her voice more enthusiastic. "Of course, sir. I can arrange that for you right away." Sandra watched the scene unfold without a word. She simply observed as the man received a completely different level of treatment. The saleswoman eagerly set up the test drive for the new customer, while Sandra remained composed. She glanced back at the convertible, then at the saleswoman, who didn't even bother to finish their conversation before shifting her attention to the wealthier-looking client. Sandra slid her hands into the pockets of her hoodie and tilted her head slightly, as if confirming something to herself. "I guess that makes things pretty clear, doesn't it?" she murmured under her breath. She turned and began walking away unnoticed. But before leaving, she cast one last look at the convertible. Her interest hadn't waned. In fact, it had only grown stronger. The difference in treatment did not go unnoticed. What the saleswoman didn't know yet was that she was about to discover exactly who she had been underestimating. Sandra was interested in a luxury car. Would she be assisted before an unexpected twist revealed who she really was? Sandra remained near the luxury convertible, taking in every detail. When the saleswoman returned, her smile was forced. But this time, she didn't even try to hide the condescension in her voice. "So, are you still interested in this model?" Sandra kept her gaze steady. "Yes, I'd like to take it for a test drive." The saleswoman raised an eyebrow, as if Sandra had just said something ridiculous. "A test drive?" Sandra nodded. "Yes, I want to see how it handles on the road before making a decision." The saleswoman let out a small, amused laugh. "Oh, so you actually want to drive this car?" Sandra didn't react. "Yes." The saleswoman crossed her arms and leaned slightly forward, her fake smile now completely gone. "Look, I don't know if I made this clear, but this model isn't for just anyone. We don't let just anyone test drive it." This time, there was no attempt at subtlety. The insult was direct. "Just anyone," Sandra repeated slowly. The saleswoman tilted her head slightly, as if Sandra should already understand what she meant. "Yes, this car is one of our most expensive models. People who test drive it are usually pre-approved customers or have an established relationship with our brand." Sandra stared at her for a moment, processing every word. "So only pre-approved customers can test it?" "Exactly," the saleswoman replied. Sandra took a slow step forward, not breaking eye contact. "But that guy over there." She gestured subtly toward a well-dressed man, speaking to another salesperson. "He doesn't look like a long-time customer." The saleswoman didn't even glance at him. "Oh, he fits the profile. You see, we can tell he's a qualified buyer." Sandra exhaled a quiet chuckle. "And my profile isn't qualified." The saleswoman finally dropped the mask. "Look, don't take it personally, okay? We get a lot of people who just want to take these luxury cars for a joy ride. Take some pictures, post online. I'm sure you understand what I mean." She emphasized the last phrase with a pointed look as if giving Sandra a warning. Sandra noticed that several customers and employees around them were beginning to pay attention, but the saleswoman didn't care. "Honestly, I think you should consider another car," she continued, her voice oozing fake sympathy. "We have an amazing selection of models that might better suit your lifestyle." Sandra remained composed. "And what lifestyle would that be?" The saleswoman let her gaze drift, obviously to Sandra's casual hoodie and cap. "Something more affordable." This time, it wasn't just a suggestion. It was a dismissal. The saleswoman wasn't just underestimating Sandra. She was actively trying to push her out. Sandra didn't flinch. She crossed her arms and tilted her head slightly. "So you're saying you won't let me test drive the car?" The saleswoman smirked, taking clear satisfaction in what she was about to say. "That's exactly what I'm saying." The response was quick, cold, and final. Sandra felt the weight of several curious eyes watching them. Some employees exchanged glances, realizing the saleswoman might have just gone too far. But the woman didn't back down. She stepped back, arms crossed, and delivered the final blow. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have real customers to attend to." With that, she turned her back on Sandra without hesitation and immediately walked toward a wealthy-looking couple, greeting them with warmth and enthusiasm. The difference in treatment couldn't be more obvious. Sandra stayed in place for a moment, feeling the silent attention of the room on her. But her face remained calm. She had seen enough. Before leaving, Sandra walked up to the reception desk where another salesman watched her, looking a little uneasy. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" he asked hesitantly. Sandra smiled. "I just want to confirm something. What's the official requirement for a test drive here?" The salesman shifted uncomfortably. "Well, usually we require some proof that the client has a serious interest in purchasing. Proof like a document, a history of past purchases, or a down payment to reserve the car." Sandra nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "And did the saleswoman mention any of that to that couple over there?" The salesman fell silent. He realized Sandra was right. But before he could answer, the saleswoman stormed back into the conversation. "Ma'am, I already explained our policy. Let's not waste any more time." Sandra looked at her completely unfazed. The saleswoman crossed her arms again and delivered one last vicious remark. "But if you're really looking for a car, maybe you should try another place. There's a dealership downtown that sells models that are more within your reach. I think you'd like it." She smiled smugly, as if she were doing Sandra a favor. Sandra just smiled back. "Thanks for the suggestion." Without another word, she turned and walked calmly toward the exit. Before leaving, she stopped for a brief second at the door and looked once more at the luxury convertible. She was still interested, only now there was something else she wanted to do. She had a plan. The saleswoman, still grinning in satisfaction, focused her attention on the wealthy couple again. But then something changed in the atmosphere. An unexpected presence was about to step through the dealership doors, and when he did, everything would be turned upside down. Sandra had decided to test the integrity of the saleswoman by requesting a test drive of the most expensive model. How would the saleswoman react to this bold request? The dealership moved along as usual. Wealthy customers browsed the cars, salespeople navigated between them, and the arrogant saleswoman carried on as if nothing had happened. Sandra, however, had not left the dealership. She simply took a few steps back, unbothered, showing no visible indignation. But inside, she knew exactly what was about to happen. And then the automatic doors of the dealership slid open again. The atmosphere shifted subtly. A tall man clad in a black leather jacket and sunglasses strode in with calm but purposeful steps. His slightly tousled dark hair swayed as he moved. He didn't need to say a word. His presence immediately commanded attention. The saleswoman, in the middle of speaking with another customer, glanced toward the entrance absent-mindedly until the man stopped in the middle of the showroom. His gaze scanned the space until it locked onto Sandra. And then, with an easy, natural smile, he spoke. "Hope I didn't keep you waiting too long, Bullock." It was like a bomb detonated in slow motion inside the saleswoman's mind. Bullock. The name thundered in her head. She felt the blood drain from her face. Her eyes widened in pure shock. The woman in the blue hoodie and black cap, the one she had humiliated, the one she had refused to serve, was Sandra Bullock. The next few seconds stretched into eternity. Customers around them froze. Murmurs rippled across the showroom. The saleswoman couldn't breathe properly. She felt the crushing weight of every single pair of eyes on her, customers, employees, even the manager. Everyone realized at the same time that she had made a catastrophic mistake. Sandra, however, was not surprised at all. She held a slight smirk, simply watching the reality sink in for the saleswoman. Keanu, still unaware of what was going on, grinned warmly as he walked up to Sandra. "Good to see you, Bullock. Did you pick out your car?" The saleswoman felt her stomach drop. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. She didn't know if she should try to explain herself, pretend nothing had happened, or just collapse from embarrassment on the spot. Keanu finally noticed the sudden awkward silence in the dealership. He frowned, looking around. "What's up? Why does everyone look so tense?" Sandra smirked and for the first time turned directly to the saleswoman, who now looked as pale as a ghost. "I think someone just realized they made the worst mistake of their life." The saleswoman gulped but couldn't say a word. Keanu followed Sandra's gaze and finally noticed the woman trembling with nerves. "Do you work here?" he asked, still unaware of the full story. The woman forced a nervous smile. "Why, yes, Mr. Reeves. Welcome. It's such an honor to have you here." The sudden shift in her tone was so extreme that even the other employees cringed on her behalf. But Sandra wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. "Funny. Now I seem to have the right profile to be served, huh?" The saleswoman held her breath. She was trapped. By now, everyone in the store had figured out what was happening. The employees stepped away discreetly, leaving the saleswoman alone in the fire pit. Keanu felt the tension and looked between Sandra and the woman. "What's going on here?" The saleswoman started sweating. "Nothing, just a little misunderstanding, Mr. Reeves." Sandra let out a dry, amused laugh. "A misunderstanding?" She took a step forward, then explained to me why. "Just a few minutes ago, I couldn't even touch this car, and now all of a sudden you're so polite." The saleswoman began stammering. I didn't, it wasn't like that." Keanu looked between Sandra and the woman, finally putting the pieces together. "Wait, you refused to serve Sandra." The saleswoman tried to recover. "No, yes. I just didn't know." Sandra crossed her arms, finishing the sentence for her. "Rich." The saleswoman shut her eyes for a second, feeling the sting of the blow. Keanu sighed heavily, shaking his head. "This still happens." Sandra smirked, victorious. She locked eyes with the saleswoman and delivered the question the woman feared the most. "So tell me, can I take the test drive now?" The saleswoman nearly choked on her own breath. Of course, we can arrange that right now." Sandra arched an eyebrow. "Now I can." The saleswoman nodded frantically, desperately trying to save herself. But Sandra pretended to think for a moment. "No thanks. I'm not interested anymore." The saleswoman looked horrified. "What?" Sandra smiled even wider. "I prefer to buy from people who treat me well from the start." The saleswoman's face twisted in pure despair. She opened her mouth to try to fix it, but there was nothing left to say. Sandra turned to Keanu and shrugged. "Shall we go?" Keanu let out a low chuckle and shook his head. "Absolutely." The saleswoman stood there frozen as the two of them walked toward the exit. But just before walking through the doors, Sandra paused. She turned one last time to the woman and flashed a sharp smile. "Oh, and thanks for the suggestion about the cheaper dealership, but I think I'll just buy straight from the manufacturer instead." The saleswoman held her breath, feeling the final crushing blow. And then, without another word, Sandra and Keanu walked out, leaving the store in absolute silence. Now that everyone knows who Sandra is, how will Keanu react to hearing how she was treated? The dealership is still in shock after Sandra and Keanu's triumphant moment. Customers whisper to each other. Employees exchange nervous glances. At the center of it all, the saleswoman remains frozen, as if still trying to process the disaster she just caused. She feels her body trembling, but not from the cold, from pure shame, regret, and absolute fear of the consequences. Then Keanu stopped walking right in front of the exit. He didn't leave. He turned around slowly and fixed an intense gaze on the saleswoman. The woman swallowed hard. Sandra paused beside him, sensing what was about to happen. Keanu slipped his hands into his jacket pockets and, with a voice calm but carrying an unbearable weight, asked, "So, is someone going to tell me what the hell just happened here?" The room fell dead silent. The saleswoman opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Realizing she was about to lose her job on the spot, the saleswoman went into full panic mode. "Mr. Reeves, Miss Bullock, please let me fix this. I can offer you a special discount." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "A discount?" The saleswoman nodded frantically. "Yes, as an apology, a VIP discount." Sandra glanced at Keanu and let out a delighted laugh. "What do you think, Keanu? Should we accept the VIP discount?" Keanu crossed his arms and pretended to think. "I'm debating. Do we take the discount, or do we go to another dealership and make sure everyone hears about this story?" The saleswoman visibly shrank where she stood. Keanu then turned to the manager. "My advice: teach your employees not to judge customers by their appearance." The manager nodded quickly, sweating bullets. Keanu gave a small, satisfied smirk. "Good luck with the online reviews." And with that, he and Sandra turned and walked out of the dealership doors without looking back. The saleswoman stood there, crushed, feeling the full weight of her mistake burying her. The saleswoman apologizes and promises to change, but is her change genuine? The automatic doors of the dealership slowly slid shut, leaving behind an atmosphere thick with tension. The saleswoman was still standing in the same spot, feeling the crushing weight of what just happened. The public humiliation, the disgrace, the piercing looks of Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock filled with contempt. She wanted to disappear. The employees around her avoided making eye contact, but the low whispers of customers gossiping about the incident made her face burn with shame. The dealership manager finally broke the silence. "My office. Now." The saleswoman felt her stomach twist, but she obeyed without question. Inside the manager's office, the air was suffocatingly tense. He slammed the door shut and stared at her with a harsh, unforgiving glare. "Do you have any idea how badly you just screwed up?" The saleswoman kept her head down, but the manager slammed his palm on the desk, demanding an answer. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." She flinched and lifted her eyes, filled with panic. "We just lost two of the most influential customers in the world, all because you decided to judge someone by their appearance." He took a deep breath, rubbing his face, struggling to contain his anger. "Do you know what that means?" The saleswoman remained silent, her anxiety skyrocketing. The manager threw a tablet onto the desk, and on the screen, multiple headlines had already surfaced. Sandra Bullock humiliated at luxury dealership. Keanu Reeves exposes discriminatory treatment. Saleswoman denies Sandra Bullock a test drive. Dealership faces online boycott. Keanu Reeves destroys arrogant saleswoman in luxury car showroom. Each headline felt like a gut punch. The dealership was getting massacred online. The manager continued, "Our ratings have plummeted. And guess who's going to take the fall for this?" The saleswoman felt the blood drain from her face. Please, sir, let me fix this." The manager laughed coldly. "Fix it? How do you think you can just apologize and everything will be fine?" She didn't know what to say. The manager stared at her for a long moment, then finally sighed heavily. "I should fire you right now." The saleswoman held her breath, but then, to her surprise, he didn't say the final words. "But maybe there's still a chance." The saleswoman blinked, shocked. "I want you to try and redeem yourself, not to save your job, but because you need to learn a lesson." He pointed toward the door. "You're going to leave this office and find a way to apologize genuinely to Sandra Bullock." Her heart raced with anxiety. "And if I do?" The manager crossed his arms. "Then maybe I'll consider not firing you." The saleswoman nodded quickly and rushed out of the office before he changed his mind. But now she had a problem. How the hell was she supposed to apologize to Sandra Bullock? The saleswoman's palms sweated profusely. She forced herself to swallow her pride and finally said, I just wanted to apologize." Sandra raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The saleswoman gulped. "I know I was arrogant, judgmental, unfair, and I have no excuse for it. All I can say is I messed up badly." Sandra tilted her head, studying the woman in front of her. "You want me to accept your apology?" The saleswoman nodded quickly. Not for my job. I know that's already lost. I just want you to know that I genuinely regret what I did. Sandra stayed silent for a few moments, then, to the saleswoman's surprise, she gave a small smile. You know, I've dealt with a lot of people like you. The saleswoman lowered her head, ashamed, but not many have the courage to admit when they're wrong. The saleswoman looked up, surprised. Sandra took another sip of her coffee and placed the cup back on the table. So you're sorry? Great. Now, the real question is, what are you going to do with that? The saleswoman frowned. What do you mean? Sandra smirked knowingly. Being sorry is easy. Changing is hard. The saleswoman fell silent, reflecting on those words. Then finally she responded, I'm going to prove that I've learned. Sandra nodded, satisfied. Then I accept your apology. The saleswoman felt a wave of relief wash over her. Thank you. Really? Sandra stood up, picked up her coffee, and winked at her. Good luck with that. And with that, she walked away, leaving the saleswoman standing there, thinking about what she'd do with her second chance. The saleswoman promised to change, but will her transformation be genuine? Or will she be tested again by an unexpected future customer? 1 week had passed since the incident. The dealership had taken a hit both online and internally. Negative reviews flooded in, and the scandal made headlines for days. Many customers who had been loyal to the brand now questioned whether they wanted to shop there again. And the saleswoman, she was still employed barely. The manager had allowed her to stay, but on one condition. You either prove you've changed or you're out. No second chances. She had one shot to show that she had truly learned her lesson, and today that shot was about to come. As the deal was finalized, the manager watched from a distance, arms crossed. He had been observing the whole time, and he saw everything. When the customer finally left, the saleswoman turned to face him. There was a long, tense moment of silence. Then the manager smirked. Not bad. The saleswoman let out a breathless chuckle. Thanks. The manager nodded. Looks like you actually learned something. She grinned. Yeah, I think I did. And for the first time in a long while, she felt truly at peace because she hadn't just saved her job. She had saved herself. That night after work, the saleswoman checked her phone. A notification popped up. It was a new online review for the dealership. She clicked on it, curious. The username, Sandra Bullock. Her breath caught as she read the comment. Sometimes the best lessons come from the worst mistakes. I hope they stick. The saleswoman smiled to herself. She had no idea if Sandra truly forgave her, but one thing was certain. She had been given a second chance. And this time, she wasn't going to waste it. The dealership received a surprisingly powerful online review from Sandra. How will this affect the company's future and the saleswoman's career? If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.